Today we're Scott Petsel from Metallic Minerals, the president. Thanks for joining us, Scott.
Great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your position in the company.
Well, as you mentioned, my name is Scott Petsel. I'm a geologist by training. I also have an MBA from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And I really have been in the business of mineral exploration for about 33 years now, since graduation from here in Colorado at Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado. I've really started out with the majors, Echo Bay, Placer Dome were a couple of companies that I worked with in the past, but really developed a lot of my skill set working with a company called Nova Gold. It was one of the original co-founders of Nova Gold, where we were able to develop over 40 million ounces of gold at our Donlin Creek project in Southwest Alaska, and a significant amount of mineralization at the Galore Creek project in Northwest BC, and also at the Arctic and Bornite project in Northern Alaska. So I have a lot of Pacific Northwest experience, but also international experience. Spent a year in Russia and a year in the Philippines and a year in Mexico. And so fairly well-rounded experience in mineral exploration on a variety of different deposits and international and domestic locations. And I'm excited to have joined Metallic in 2016 and have recently, within the last 7 months, been promoted to the role of president. And we've got some great assets in Metallic, so life's never been better. We have this great package of assets and a lot of excitement about what we're doing despite the markets, and really looking forward to the next few years of moving forward in my career. So.
Yeah, I think that's a big plus in the company and for investors to see that, hey, you started as a geologist, not as an executive or MBA. You have the gambit of skills that some people, a lot of companies may not have. So.
Yeah, I think it's important, for a growth stage junior mineral exploration company to really have good technical strength at the top, because your whole emphasis is on making discoveries and moving those discoveries to resources. And you've got to have some understanding of that. But at the same time, it is a business. And so you have to understand the baseline of how business operates, risk. And the risk that's involved and how to mitigate and manage that risk.
Great. So talk about the team and how they differentiate from the industry.
Well, first of all, I would mention that, Metallic Minerals Corporation is part of the Metallic group of companies, which includes Granite Creek Copper and also Stillwater Critical Minerals. So the three companies have joined together since 2016 under essentially a strategy, a common business strategy of acquiring assets and off markets in brownfields locations next to existing producers and high grade producers, and trying to de-risk those deposits or those properties and build resources in the process. So it's a group of companies. We have at the leadership level a very strong independent. They're each independent, so we have presidents and CEOs for each company, but we share resources below the CFO level. So we've found a way to actually reduce our overall business cost by having a team, an exploration team of geologists and others that really mimics that of a mid-tier mining company, because we have depth that we can spread across each of the three companies and take those staff and allocate them to the projects that have the most immediate need. So good, strong leadership within Metallic Minerals ourselves. Myself and our CEO and chairman, Greg Johnson, both come out of the Nova Gold School of Learning, essentially, where we were co-founders in Nova Gold and had a great track record of success with several major projects where we took a share price of 25 cents to $20 over a period of a decade, and brought a great degree of resources to the table in terms of billions of dollars of value. So a good record of success, and that's really what we're trying to do now. Is we've taken that very successful NovaGold story. We've franchised it out into these 3 independent companies that are moving forward and have the assets that we think we can duplicate that success level with.
Interesting. So you're saying the shared resources between 3 is a strategic advantage for sure.
Absolutely, yes. And again, so in many ways we can hire people that we may not be able to support in a very small junior company because of their specific work abilities or technical skill level might not be something that we would need throughout the course of a year or multiple years. But because we can allocate them across the 3 companies, that really helps us maintain a high level of and degree of skill in the group.
Interesting. Okay, let's get into kind of the projects, the number of projects and kind of where they are.
Yeah, so Metallic Minerals has 2 key projects. Our Keno Silver project in the Yukon territories. It's a high-grade silver lead zinc district, and we have about half of the district in our control, 171 square kilometers. And our second key project is our La Plata project, which is located in southwest Colorado. It's a copper silver porphyry system with a history of exploration by the majors back 50 years ago. And we recently put out a resource there of nearly 1 billion pounds of copper. Includes 15 million ounces of silver as well. So,
excellent. So in each location, there's a lot of proven resources from other companies, sounds like. So,
yeah, so particularly in the Keno Hill district, we don't have any resources tabled yet, but our neighbors, Alexco, have over 120 million ounces of silver in resources. The district itself has produced over 200 million ounces of silver. It's historically one of the most important silver districts in Canada. It's also one of the highest grade silver districts in the world. And our property portfolio, which I mentioned is half the district, really represents exploration upside and potential resources to either feed that mill that Hecla now, since Alexco has been taken over by Hecla Mining, which recently closed this week. Our ground represents, the future of that mill by providing potential ounces as we progress the project and build that resource base for ourselves.
Interesting. Would you like to talk about any special technologies that you guys use or something that's coming online that give you another advantage? Or?
Well, I'll just mention that there's the field is constantly evolving, and we're always trying to keep up with what the current trends are in the technology in terms of exploration techniques. And what we've tried to do is just simply be systematic. And the old timers did it right as well. So you've got to have a good mix of boots on the ground geology to get out, look at these deposits, understand them, build the data sets, and begin to layer everything into these data sets. And that includes the higher level technology. But a lot of that technology is being able to take all these data layers and process them to where you can utilize the technology to identify targets that haven't previously been identified. And so, we at our Keno Hill project just recently completed a LiDAR survey, for example, a very detailed definition of the ground, the topography, that will help us in terms of identifying lineaments or structures that cross through the territory that might represent vein features that we haven't seen because of vegetated cover. So that's one example. Another example is we've applied AI technology through our collaboration with Goldspot Technologies, and they layer all this data, throw it into the black box, and spit out some targets for us that are based on the highest level of science that we have in the industry today. So
it's exciting for you because you're a geologist. Right?
It's right, yeah. It's exciting, and the interesting thing about our La Plata project is that we have this resource. The resource is really based on the back of work that was done by Rio Tinto and Freeport back in the 70s, right? And so they drilled on a very limited land package, 15,000 meters of drilling to generate the basis of a resource. And we've come in and done very systematic work since our acquisition of the project in 2019 to get that resource to the table, including confirmatory drilling. But my point relative to technology is that work done by the majors was done 50 years ago, and there hadn't been any work done in that district looking at the porphyry system for over 50 years now. And so when you think about how much technology has evolved in that time, and our ability to actually see things more specifically using even hyperspectral technology to identify alteration that might be indicative of other porphyry centers on the project, it's really quite stunning and really exciting.
Could you put a number on extraction improvement since the 50 years, just so readers?
Extraction improvement.
Improvement, yeah. Like for over 50 years, they're going to be extracting much with technology much better. So
yeah, I don't know if I can answer that question directly, but essentially back in the 50s, it was bulldozers, it was small drills, and there wasn't computers. And so when you just think about how all of those things that have transpired or transgressed since that point in time, there's a real ability to put that into mineral exploration and help to make new discoveries, geophysical surveys, just geochemical analysis techniques, modeling techniques with three-dimensional abilities. And along with that, there have been developments in the extraction side as well, where you have remote controlled technology to go in and mine some of these deposits and do better.
So multifaceted, it's hard to put it. Yeah,
exactly.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay, so it sounds like you've got some great strengths in the company. Readers always want to know weaknesses. So, what kind of weaknesses do you have, and how you're addressing them?
Weaknesses. Oh, that's great. Well, one of the weaknesses is access to capital right now. I think we just need more cash because we've got assets that we have the ability. We're right at that inflection point of having put essentially 5 years into Keno and 4 years into our La Plata project, really building that base level of information and data and working with it and making discoveries along the way. But at the same time, we're at the inflection point where we can actually start to put resources on the table, like we did with La Plata here this last spring. And so what we need, our weakness is cash to be able to actually go in and expand these resources. And at Keno, we've identified all these targets, and we've been able to very successfully drill. This year we drilled 25 holes, and we don't have the assay results yet, but I know that we've basically gone 25 for 25 in our incurring mineralization in those holes. So we know where to drill, how to get the work done. We've applied the technology. We just need cash to go in and make the thing happen.
Right. So. Yeah, an issue for a lot of companies.
Yes,
for sure.
Absolutely.
So let's pop into financials since you talked about that. What kind of runway do you have, and debt, and those type of things?
Yeah, so we have 147 million shares outstanding. We have no debt, and we have about $4 million cash, which gets us into well into next year and allows us to kind of move these resources or take the information that we've got at our Keno Hill project, where we've been evaluating, tabling these resources in the near term before launching next year's field season. So we have the ability, with the cash that we've got, to get well into next year and potentially table those resources and perhaps undergo a small field program. But in reality, it would behoove us to have a bit more. We could spend on the order of $5 million effectively to continue to advance these targets. Yeah.
Excellent. So then what would be the next option in the future for financing?
Well, I think we'll just be opportunistic with respect to, market conditions and opportunities that come along. And, our last financing was an $8 million financing from an individual that essentially cold called us from a family fund and recognized the value that we had and said, hey, I'm interested. So we set up the financing. We were able to move forward with that and really execute 2 great programs this last summer. And so, we're going to be flexible, look at the market conditions, figure out what the right timing is, and make sure we finance at a high enough price to maintain some growth and move forward in that direction.
Good. So that kind of segues into your shareholder mix. What percentage is retail, institutional, private, insider?
Yeah, so I know we've got about 19% in management's hands. Eric Sprott's one of our bigger shareholders. I can't remember any of the statistics in terms of the breakdown of retail versus non, and so I'll have to defer on the rest of that question. But I think some of that's available on our website.
I think what investors like to see is, hey, how many of the investors are there for the long haul?
Yeah.
So what percentage, how many of the people in the team are shareholders, and do they reinvest? How much skin's in the game? So maybe you want to talk about that.
Well, I think that is something that, we participate as a management team in each of the financings and continue to have belief and understand that having ownership of what we're trying to accomplish here is an important component of what we do. And we just have a strong belief in our abilities to continue to make discoveries and do the work that we need to do, and in the assets that we have to help us do that. So
good. So let's assume that the gold and markets, precious metals, continue to fall with the broader markets. What would that do to your financials, and how do you feel it would change?
I think it's always a concern. So we look forward to and try and really plan for both success and the fact that maybe we won't be able to infuse capital into the group to continue the work that we've done at the pace that we like. But we know how to scale down and weather the storm and make sure that we maintain the assets that we have and strike when the time is right. So
excellent. So would you say you have some advantages in terms of costs, lower fixed costs? Where do you have some leverage in that area?
Well, I think the biggest advantage we have in terms of cost or the operation of running our business is this shared resources below the CEO level, and that really does help save money in terms of our monthly burn, and how we operate. And so that's a critical component of us minimizing that burn. Otherwise, we just try and operate as effectively and efficiently as we can. And I think the one way that we do that is having gone through several years of exploration effort on each of our major projects. It provides us with the knowledge of how to be as efficient as we possibly can be. And there's one other element that I haven't really mentioned about our story, and that is our alluvial portfolio. We actually have 20 miles of creeks in the Klondike district and another 20 miles of creeks in the Keno district that are alluvial or placer claims that have potential for significant amounts of gold. And so we're actively looking for operators and talking to a significant operator now about taking on some of these claims for us under a royalty agreement that would pay us back 10 to 12%. And if we're successful in initiating some of these opportunities, it provides us with potential cash flow to operate the company even in the worst of times. And, it could be as much as, $500,000 a year that could come as revenue to the company to allow that to happen. So we're actively engaged in looking for more operators on these alluvial fields, and, we'll continue to treat them as potential royalty income sources for us as we move forward.
That's a nice ace in the hole.
Absolutely.
Excellent. What other comments and summary would you like to include?
Well, I think, again, just in summary, we're really at that inflection point of growing with the idea of moving all these great discoveries that we've had at our Keno Hill project in the Yukon towards a resource base. It may not be right away. We want to make sure we get over the critical mass, and have something that is significant to the market. So we're actively evaluating that, but moving from, an exploration company to a resource-based company and really working to de-risk those resources is kind of the stage that we're at. And I think there's the potential for great growth on all these assets and great growth in the stock price based on our ability to execute our plan.
Excellent. So in terms of watching the catalysts that move the stock, should they keep an eye on the newsletter? What would you like?
Yeah, well, it will be, I think the thing that you'll see most in the near term is results from our 2022 field season at both La Plata and at Keno Hill, and perhaps more news on the alluvial front with respect to agreements forthcoming. And that will essentially drive the near-term news flow. But you can, check the website, mmngsilver.com for our news, and plenty of other sources, because we're out there really trying to tell our story as much as we can.
Great. Thank you for your time, Scott.
Thank you very much.